Hello everyone! Today I wanted to talk about something that has been bugging me for quite some time, and that is the stalemate. This video is specifically targeted at a 6v6 TF2 audience, and what you're seeing in this clip is playoff match footage from earlier tonight where my team, UP, plays against .ing. Now I want to preface this by saying that it is from the ESEA Open Division, which is the lowest level division in all of ESEA. However, even though we aren't playing at the highest levels of TF2, I still think that this footage accurately sums up the problem that many competitive players face. Now I've been playing TF2 competitively for 4 years, and I still love this game. I love the back and forth action, the pushing, the defending, the Ubers, the team fights. I'm pretty convinced that no other game can compare to TF2 when it comes to team-based, action-packed FPS gaming. There is so much coordination and strategy that goes into playing this game, and I love every moment of it. Except for the stalemates. Now as you can see in this game, it has quite a lot of action in it, and so far it's been a pretty close match with both teams trying to win rounds. The stalemate, however, occurs in a very specific situation when the winning team is in control of the middle point and decides to not push the next control point in the series. As you may know, having the middle point gives your team an advantage because when you die, you spawn closer to the middle point than the enemy team. This is by design and is supposed to give your team an incentive to push the next point. However, one tactic that teams employ is the stalemate, which is better known as parking the bus. You sit on middle comfortably knowing that the enemy team will not push with this respawn disadvantage, and you let the match timer run out until you ultimately win. Now in most cases, teams know this tactic is boring, cheap, and straight up not fun, but when the stakes are high enough, teams will do whatever it takes to win, including stalemating. In this scenario, both teams are in the lower bracket of playoffs, and the loser of this match will get knocked out. In other words, it's really important to both of these teams that they win this match. As you can see, the red team, ING, is winning 1-0 in the first half of the match with about 18 minutes left in the first half. If this was not a playoff match and it was just a normal scrimmage that didn't count for anything, I would be willing to bet that ING would push because they have an advantage and are quote-unquote on offense. However, because this is a high stakes match with playoff implications, they choose to sit on the middle point and take a defensive position instead. It is this decision that is so frustrating for players like myself. My team, UP, wants to have a chance to even out the round, but we should not be expected to push while we are at a standard defensive position on second point with no potential advantages. In fact, by most teams' standards, it would actually be a mistake to push in this situation because we are at a disadvantage. And so there you have it. This is where we reach the stalemate. A situation where both teams have taken defensive positions and neither team is willing to push for fear of losing the round. Both teams just sit in place, and when you're in this situation, it is customary to sit back and have a nice discussion about how your day went, how boring this game is, and make ironic jokes about stalemates. During this 7-minute bathroom break, I personally was questioning why I pay money every month to play in a league that encourages this kind of behavior. However, I love this game a lot, and I really think that we should be able to find a way around this situation. Now it should be clear that I'm not trying to whine or complain about Team ING's behavior in this situation. It's perfectly reasonable for them to do this because it's in the rules. But the reason why I made this video is because I think that we shouldn't incentivize this kind of behavior. As a player, shoutcaster, and spectator for 6v6 TF2, I think that it should be plainly obvious to anyone watching this that it's boring. And even though the situation rarely happens, I would like to open up a discussion about ways to solve this problem so that it doesn't happen in the future. Riveting gameplay, am I right? You guys are lucky that I'm fast forwarding through this and not making you sit through 7 minutes of stalemating. It's hard to call the game competitive or fast paced when you're staring at one spot spamming rockets every few seconds before deciding to go pick up more ammo. As you can see from the video, eventually my team is going to get a little impatient with the offensive team not pushing, and we're going to decide to push from this defensive position, but as you'll see, it ultimately fails, and we are again going to be forced back into the defensive position. Now I will be one of the first people to admit that we're not exactly playing at the highest level of TF2, and it's arguable whether or not a team of higher skill would be able to avoid getting into this situation altogether. However, I'm fairly certain that at any level of TF2, as long as you're able to meet the criteria for a stalemate, it's possible for the offensive team to continue to run down the clock or force the defensive team into a bad fight due to time constraints or sheer boredom and impatience. It seems that once you are in this situation, the team that has possession of the middle point has all of the control and power. They get to decide whether or not they want to fight the defending team or continue holding their current positions, and that is where the problem lies. It seems unfair to put constraints on the defending team when they have no control over the situation, so most suggestions for fixing this problem revolve around incentivizing the offensive team to push or punish them for defending. You can see now that my team has pulled back to defend the last point, and we are again in another stalemate situation. Rather than sit through another stalemate, Okus, our roaming soldier, immediately suicides, and this triggers the push from ING. They waited for a man advantage before pushing, but this begs the question, did they really need any more of an advantage than the respawn advantage in order to justify pushing in this situation? Regardless, it is the red team's uber push that ultimately breaks the stalemate, and our solid defense allows us to push out of our last point and capture second. You will see a couple more fights break out as the teams get larger advantages, but ultimately you will see both teams stabilize and resume the stalemate situation. One-man suicides from bombing roamers are very common during stalemates, or when you're on last point you'll see playmaking classes such as sniper and spy. When I last discussed this topic on stream, some viewers commented saying that everyone has a different idea of fun in this game, but as far as I'm concerned, the only person having fun is the sniper or spy who's getting into position. The other 11 players are forced to stand around and wait. As for myself, you can see me in the bottom left corner staring at a wall so that I don't get killed by a sniper. So much fun. So now that I've talked a little bit about what stalemates are and how to get into stalemates, let's talk a little bit more about how to prevent ourselves from getting into stalemates in the future. One suggestion that has been brought up in the past is this idea of creating a shot clock like they have in basketball. In professional basketball, the shot clock is designed to prevent the offensive team from simply holding onto the ball until the match time runs out. So the offensive team instead has 24 seconds to shoot the ball at the basket, otherwise the ball is given to the other team. In TF2, we conveniently have a stalemate timer at the top of the screen that is already set to 10 minutes when teams capture a point. One suggestion would be to lower that shot clock to somewhere in the 3 to 5 minute range in order to force the offensive team to push sooner. We play with 30-minute halves in TF2, so rather than being able to stalemate the match for 1/3 of the time, that time would be lowered to something like 1/10 or 1/6 of the time. Once the stalemate timer hits 0, neither team is awarded a point and a new round would begin. Now obviously 3 to 5 minutes is simply a range and is not a very scientific way of determining a stalemate timer. I think that we would need to do extensive playtesting in order to figure out what the best time is. However, if you look at an average game of TF2 with no stalemates, you typically see a team capturing a point once every 2 to 3 minutes. When setting this time, it would be important to give teams adequate time to set up their pushes while not giving them too much time so that they can stalemate for extended periods of time. I personally think that 10 minutes is extremely generous as it currently stands. Another suggestion that I've heard thrown around is this idea of creating better map design. However, I would like to point out that while making the choke points easier for the offensive team to push does encourage them to push, it doesn't force them to push, and they will still likely take a defensive position in order to hold the middle or fourth points. As halftime approaches, the offensive team continues to stall until there is no longer enough time for us to push all the way back to their last. So with about 2.5 minutes left in the half, they push our last point. This is essentially a risk-free play for them because if they fail to push here, there is no consequence, but it does give them a chance to go up another round. Now someone who watches this clip might say, isn't it your fault for letting the enemy team capture the middle point? You should be doing a better job of winning the mid-fights or controlling the pace of the game like the enemy team is doing. However, I would again like to point out that I'm not saying this isn't a valid strategy. I'm simply saying that stalemates are inherently not fun. Not fun for players, not fun for shoutcasters, and not fun for spectators. Nobody wants to see a stalemate. It is simply one of the most viable tactics to employ when you are stuck in this situation. However, rather than let it continue, I think we should create a solution that removes this tactic from the game. We ban a number of other items that make the game less fun to play. We've banned double heavy and double engineer strategies as they aren't fun to play, and I think that we too have the power to end stalemates. So what do you guys think? Are stalemates worth keeping? Would a shot clock be good for TF2? Let me know what you think in the comments, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. See ya!